We welcome you to the Friday edition of AFA Today from the belly of the news beast, Lower Manhattan in New York City, just in the shadow of the Freedom Tower and just right across from the now National Museum and Memorial for the 9/11 Remembrance. And not only that, just north of the most historic cemetery in all of America, and we are glad to have you with us. Kevin McCullough is my name. My phone number is 888-589-8840, 888-589-8840. And to end this news week, we've got a lot that we're keeping our eye on for you, and I'm sad to say that it is not really a better day than it was yesterday when I left the airwaves. Many of you, and I mean many of you, probably more so than any other segment in recent memory, wrote me about the end of yesterday's broadcast, in which I just challenged the National Security Advisor, Dr. Susan Rice, to resign her post. See, I think that if there is now evidence of emails that demonstrate that you were coached and participated in the framing of a lie to the American people about what happened to our best and brightest, our servicemen that died on 9/11/2012 in Benghazi from a terror attack, and you lied to the American people and tried to make it say that it was something, related to a video that it was patently not related to at all, and you knew about it, and you knew it 15 minutes into the attack, and you knew while the attack proceeded all through the night and help was never sent. Our two brave Navy SEALs were never given the proper response that they should have been given as brave heroes themselves, running to the sound of gunfire, not away from it. Nobody came to the gunfire that they were under. That's a different look for our executive branch in terms of how we respond to things. Normally, we try to go help our own, but we didn't, and we don't know where the president was, and we don't know really what happened to Secretary Clinton. And what we do know is that just a few days later, then Ambassador Susan Rice went to the airwaves and participated in lying to the American people on 5 different news channels, telling the same fabricated story 5 times that Sunday morning. And the impetus of this was to get the American people to believe that this video had caused this outrageous outrage. And that was bad enough. And you should have resigned before they asked you to lie. Dr. Rice, if you had any ounce of character, you would have said, I'm not going to tell the American people this, and you would have gone the other way. Mr. Panetta, who was defense secretary, is no longer in his post as defense secretary, and I wonder if he resigned over some of the ways that some of this was handled. Because unlike you, Dr. Rice, who said that you were danged if you knew as to whether or not the new select committee on the investigation into what happened in Benghazi would develop any new information. Danged if you knew. Those are such compassionate words, Dr. Rice. They're so thoughtful and reflective. I would like to think that anybody serving in the capacity of the National Security Advisor, like the Dr. Rice before you, would be steadfastly concerned about not only figuring out what happened, but ensuring that it never happens again. And you just seem to be very flippant about the whole thing. And that's sad. That's disgusting. That's heartbreaking. It's un-American. The fact that you can stand up and dang if I know your way through a couple of questions about the Benghazi Select Committee, it doesn't show a degree of seriousness. Somebody that desires to be a serious public servant, somebody that desires to be recognized for your academic achievements and for other things, Danged if you knew. Dr. Rice, why haven't you resigned? You lied publicly to the American people on 5 news channels 5 days after the attack on Benghazi. And you knew it was a lie. You had the facts. They weren't still being developed. 20 minutes into the attack, the night of the attack, Secretary of Defense Panetta told the White House that it was a terrorist incident, that these terrorists were launching mortars and rockets. You knew, and yet you told lies anyway, Dr. Rice. Maybe you can live with that. Maybe you can look yourself in the mirror and not feel skeeved out by the betrayal that you have participated in against the family members of 4 of our bravest. But that I can't live with. So I've started a new hashtag. Why haven't you resigned? I hope that people will go on the Facebook page and virally forward yesterday's portion of the interview in which I asked Dr. Rice, why haven't you resigned? We need to be asking that question in full-scale viral assault upon the interwebs. Dr. Rice, why haven't you resigned? You know that it was a lie. Your boss knows that he asked you to lie. We'll probably never impeach him. But why haven't you resigned? Do you desire to be an honorable public servant? You should resign. Do you desire to have any credibility left attached to your name, Dr. Rice, when this is all, when the administration's over and your party's out of power and you don't have any job and you're looking for a speaking engagement? Do you want to have any credibility? Why haven't you resigned? Resignation from your post would have been the honorable protest over what your boss told you to do, and you haven't done it. Mr. Panetta's not still there. Deputy Secretary of the CIA, Mr. Morell's not there. They've both come out and said this Benghazi committee, Democratic administration officials in the president's cabinet, they've come out and said this Benghazi committee is a good thing and it should settle the issue because you'll get to the bottom of the questions that have not been answered for the victims' families. Dr. Rice, why haven't you resigned? Dr. Rice, why haven't you resigned? Why haven't you resigned? Anyway, I got a ton of response to what we talked about at the end of the show yesterday. I hope that we can keep that conversation going. But there's a lot of other things that I want to get into this hour. Did you hear about? And they've got this story over at onenewsnow.com right now. Did you hear about the woman in Texas? Let's see. Trying to figure out what her name is here. Jeanette Golden. She owns the property that the sign sits on. She owns the sign. But what's on the sign has been deemed not allowed by the Department of Transportation. And the Liberty Institute, associated with Liberty University, is fighting for the constitutional rights of Jeanette Golden in Hemphill, Texas, who has been told that she can't put a 10 Commandments sign on her own property adjacent to a highway. The Department of Transportation ordered her to remove a 6-foot by 12-foot sign, then backtracked and said she had to go through numerous hoops to apply for permission. Now, Mike Berry of the Liberty Institute is the attorney on this. He told One News Now the latest twist is the state has decided no sign is permitted. He said, and another thing that folks should be clear about on this is her private property, and so for her to engage in religious expression on her own private property and for the Department of Transportation to come in and tell her that she can't do that she's basically banned from doing that, it's just outrageous. The attorney also notes numerous advertising billboards are all along the same highway. And nobody seems to have a problem with those. If they're going to come back and say, well, we don't have an outright ban, well, then in that case, it looks like they're just banning her sign, which happens to have speech related to her faith on it. But they're allowing other types of commercial signs. That would also be unconstitutional and viewpoint discrimination. Liberty Institute has sent a demand letter to the DOT, giving them 60 days to restore Golden's rights before further action is taken. Friends, that's not New York State. That's not California. That's Texas. You don't think religious expression is under fire? Doesn't get more red than Texas. Okay, here's what I want to bring to your attention this hour as well, and we'll have plenty of time to take your calls on it. Mary Catherine Ham, who is a contributor at Fox News, longtime friend of mine, she's been on my show various times, filed this story at hotair.com yesterday. There's a whole new tranche of email that has come in. The Judicial Watch, you know that they filed a Freedom of Information Act request, a FOIA request, a number of months ago, and we're starting to find out things about the IRS scandal through the information of that Freedom of Information Act that we would not have found out had they not been doing this work. But what Mary Catherine Ham documents is that there are a series of emails that refute the White House's longtime defense of the agency's actions in the targeting of the conservative and Christian groups scandal. The emails uncovered by a Judicial Watch FOIA request reveal that there was direction coming from the Washington headquarters of the IRS and that the targeting of Tea Party groups was indeed political. In a July 2012 email, writes the Washington Examiner's Mark Tapscott, Holly Paz, who was then the director of the IRS Rulings and Agreements Division, asked the IRS lawyer Stephen Grudnitsky to let Cindy and Sharon know how we have been handling Tea Party applications in the last few months. Cindy Thomas, the former director of the IRS Exemptions Office in Cincinnati, and Sharon Camarillo was a senior manager in its Los Angeles office. This email conflicts with claims by the Obama administration officials that the targeting effort was done exclusively by the government workers in the Cincinnati IRS office. So, in this one email, one of the biggest claims that the president made that this was only rogue people in Cincinnati and there was no Washington involvement at all is directly contradicted. The fact that you have direct involvement by government workers not in the Cincinnati office is directly put forward. Grudnitsky worked in the IRS headquarters exemptions technical unit. In his response to Paz, he said his colleagues were, quote, working the Tea Party applications in coordination with Cincy. We're developing a few applications here in D.C. and providing copies of our development letters with the agent to use as examples in the development of future Tea Party cases. So, two direct claims that the president made, even on Super Bowl Sunday. No Washington involvement and not political in the least, busted up by this email alone. We are working Tea Party applications in D.C., and they are being targeted because they are Tea Party, and we are wanting to set these as precedent for future cases. Your thoughts on this? 888-589-8840 when we continue. It's AFA Today on AFR Talk.